Alright, so X-Files. But first, I wanted to say, I'd like to have these discussions a little bit closer together, or more rapidly. I haven't had the opportunity, though, lately because there's been quite a bit of construction on the bogs over there. You can't really see it, but there's been some background noise, so it's limited the opportunities I have to sit down here and film. So I just wanted to say, there's not going to be this much space, or at least I don't intend that, between these videos. I don't want to be dictated, like I said, by a clock, but I am passionate about the things I haven't been able to talk about. So, just want to get that out of the way. So, X-Files. I don't know if any of you picked up on this, and I don't necessarily know how you would, because there's only been, 2 or 3 of these discussions. It's tough to pick out a pattern from that. But if you haven't, this first chapter, this first portion here, this first section is going to look and operate like the first season 2 of X-Files. The first season 2 of X-Files was very episodic. They were dip dodging, they were going here and there, and that's what we're doing. We're dip dodging. One day they were over, they're over at the swamp monster, then the next day they're at the interdimensional, supernatural entity, then the next day we're over at flying saucers, and then bam. There's an episode that establishes the narrative arc of this franchise, or, that show or whatnot. And the reason I'm dipping and dodging is so we can create a narrative landscape, or not a narrative landscape, but a perspective landscape, or agreed upon foundation, or just more necessarily to establish the information I need to establish so that I can commentate and have these discussions at the places I'd like them. And I can't just go and have those discussions at those places. We need to build up to that, or at least establish a framework, or a whole, a picture, or a whole space where we can come from and commentate from. And that's necessarily what, why I'm going from place to place here, why I'm doing these things, and it's going to be episodic, and today's not necessarily going to be one of these long, or establishing one of these long arcs, that's coming. But today's episode, what we're doing is barefoot running. Why barefoot running? It doesn't necessarily make sense, or at least this episode, I want this to be a home base, or our inception dreidel. The reason for that is because some of the places we're going to go in these discussions, and the discussions I'd like to have, and the places I like to go with these discussions, depending on who you are going to be tough to swallow or digest or believe, really, because it fundamentally deals with the entirety of a population believing something that's either false that's true, or true that's false. They're being fundamentally misled, or there's it deals with generally mass-perpetuated hypnosis, delusions, or falsities, like mass-perpetuated falsities. Delusions is a little rough, but in reality, a lot of the ways, it's what it is. It's a mass deluding of what the natural ways we should exist and be. Because of that, and because sometimes, a lot of these discussions and a lot of these perspectives leave you seeing the populace living a life unnatural and untrue, and that gets hard to believe, or like I said, tough to swallow or buy into. And because of that, like I said, this is one exercise of stepping outside of a paradigm and looking at it and critiquing it. It's also meant to, on a separate note, establish one of the thematic themes that are going to, or motifs that run throughout all these discussions, and that's returning back to nature. Because a lot of the ways, we've been misled or deluded have, dealt with us not living the natural way. But most importantly, because this is so intrinsic to everyone can run. Everyone has a body and feet and ankles. The sourcing of the information is even that tough, and it's not even that much of an abstraction to get to this space. And because of that, I would like this to be, or I'm intending this to be a home base, our inception dreidel. Because when we're out in the midst of it, and stuff is just out there and crazy, we can come back here and understand, or at least, establish some roots so we can come back to this spot and understand that there are many mass falsities that are being followed and perpetuated that make no sense. So again, today's episode, barefoot running. And again, like I said, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for what I'm doing, but it will. And I know we'd probably like to have these discussions. We probably want to have this discussion. I know I'm rambling here, but I know we like to have this discussion at the end, where the conclusions, the meat and potatoes, where I'm commentating from the point and my perspective. But like I said, this is why we need to establish a framework. So we need to have our vegetables first. So the reason we need to have our vegetables, like I said, is I need to fundamentally deconstruct this concept. I need to eviscerate it so you can fundamentally understand how idiotic it is. So then we can address the paradigm that's going on, remove ourselves from it, and then look from outside of it. And to look out from outside of it, you need to understand and need to see it how fundamentally idiotic and stupid I see it. So we need to have our, vegetables here. We need to run through some information. So to begin to eviscerate the notion or the idea of needing to run with shoes, I have a few points. And one, you weren't born with shoes. Two, we're gonna move into a biomechanic argument here. But first, before we do that, I'd like to kind of establish, or at least, we're gonna start with the pitched narrative, the pitched perspective, or at least the agreed upon perspective here. Let's check if I'm recording. Yes, sir. Okay, so running. Now, where does this start? So at least the main perspective that's pushed, or at least the whole one, the narrative right now that you need shoes to run and all these things. Running is harmful to you. It's destructive to the body, and it'll deteriorate your joints over time. If you go to a running doctor, they say you have, you'll be lucky if you get 20 to 25 years, but pretty soon you're going to need some new knees and hips. It's destructive to the body, it deteriorates your body. Running is going to inherently shorten your running career, all these things. Why? When you run, there's a lot of forces generated in running. And when you're running, you have this consistent landing force. If you're 100 and whatever pounds, that landing is, X more forces and yada, yada, yada. So as you're running, you have these concussive forces that move through the body and damage the body, right? So to counteract this, what modern science is going to do is it's going to develop a product or a thing to counteract this narrative of damage, right? So the way this happens is if there's these, concussive forces continuously, what we are going to do is we're going to put some rubber or some foam on the bottom of your foot, so when you land, it absorbs some of that shock, right? And now if you look at most modern running shoes, that's what you see. And the way that looks is it starts pretty thin, and then it gets thick, right? And then so toe, heel, that thickness at the heel, right, that cushion, right, so you can land and absorb some of that shock, is where a lot of this problem comes from. But at least what they say is that cushion is meant to counteract these forces moving throughout your body. What that heel does is it allows you to move and run a lot of different ways, in many ways that you aren't normally meant to run. So if you look at most modern runners, right, and it has to do a little bit with the weight, but it's not even, right? It's mainly what it allows you to do and the position your foot's in when you put your shoe on, what it makes you do. So if you see most runners, right, they land on their heels. And, that sounds stupid, but what do I mean by that? And they literally do. And I'm going to get up and show you. Okay, so when runners are running, right, and I hope you can see me here. When most modern day runners are running, they run like this. And I'm going to have to exaggerate it. The angles aren't as bad as what I'm making it out to be, just because I have to fit this in the camera here. But runners, right, they land with their foot in front of them, right, outstretched, land on the heel. Bam. Right? Bam. Bam. And what this does, right, yeah, you got the foam on the bottom of your foot to absorb those, those forces. But when you land, and this is where a lot of this concussive forces come from, when you land on your heel like this, right, on a locked knee and a locked like a locked hip, locked ankle, locked knee, and locked hip. Your hip's not so locked, but you know what I mean. When you do that, there's no places for that force to go aside into your joints, right? If you're just hitting the ground consistently like this, it's a locked appendage. Those joints are the absorption of the force comes from the squishing of your cartilage and hopefully the rubber on your heel. So that's why, it looks like that. If you look at most modern runners, they look like this, right? And it's because you're getting a lot of these concussive forces and odd forces that aren't manipulated properly because of this landing pattern, like I said. When you land on your heel, the force doesn't go anywhere. Thus, you get this unregular running pattern. It's pretty dun, 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 dun. You also run slower. Your gait isn't the same, whatnot. But that's where the damage comes from that is associated with running, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But what is proper running form, or at least what is countering this narrative? So when you look at most modern runners, right, like I said, they land on the heel, right? Now, if you're going to run barefoot, you don't have shoes inherently, so you don't have that heel. And if you think about it, if you don't have that heel, you can't land on your heels. Maybe if you're running on the beach and like something like that, but that's the equivalent of having something under you. Say if you're trying to run on asphalt, rock, hard trail, you can't do it. You can't land on your heels. It's very painful. Like if you smack your head against the wall, it's gonna hurt because you're not supposed to do it. So you're not supposed to land on your heels. And if you run barefoot, you'll find that out. So if you're not landing on your heels, or if you're not running the same way, how are you running? Well, and actually first we'll do this. We'll start here. So, you're landing on your heels. Boom, 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 boom. Well, actually, we'll go to this. So when you proper running form, because I had to establish this before I'd go into the next thing. Proper running form. So if you don't have that, if you can't land on your heel, where are you landing, right? You're landing. So instead of your heel, right? Instead of landing on your heel and then the rest of the foot meeting and then you launch from that position, you land on your fourth and fifth metatarsal. Metatarsal are the knuckles in your feet, right? So the outside ones, the outside two. You're landing about here on this leading edge of your foot, the outside edge, right about here. And then the rest of your foot meets, right? So this is the first contact site. Then, half a second or microseconds, whatever, this is gonna touch, and then the heel's gonna touch. So instead of, right, because you have all this force absorption on the bottom of your feet, right? So when you have your leg outstretched and you're landing, bam, there's nowhere for it to go. That's a heel strike. When you run barefoot, when you land, because you're landing on your you're landing on the balls of your feet first, you have to have your feet more under you, right? And when you have your feet under you, and when you're landing on the balls of your feet, right? So you land on the balls of your feet, bam, then the rest of the foot rolls, and then your heel kisses the ground or touches the ground, and then you are loaded into your next strike, and then you spring into your next strike. When you're landing on the balls of your feet, or not the balls of your, but the forefoot, biomechanically, the position that puts your body in is a bent joint, and a bent joint. We got 3 fulcrums here to bend, right? And the bending and the way those forces are loaded are important. We'll get into that. But your feet are more under you, and you're landing on your forefeet, right, when you run without shoes. A little experiment you can do, or just something you can do to kind of see where I'm coming from with this. It's not entirely accurate, I'll get into this in a second, but it demonstrates points. Jump up and down on your toes, or like your feet, the balls of your feet, and then try to jump up and down on your heels. You're not going to be able to see me do this, you're just going to see my body, but you'll still see how inefficient one is or the other is, right? So if I'm just going to jump up and down, I'm going to probably start jumping up and down on my toes. That's just naturally how it happens. It's what it is, and, or if you say someone to jump up and down, they're going to start jumping down on the balls of their feet. The other thing is not natural. But this, you can do all freaking day. I have so much energy to do this, right? The body almost seems like it's made for it, right? Because it is. Now, if I try my heels, you can't do it. It's not we'll get into why, but you can't do it. It's very inefficient. It's kind of comedic in a way, or stupid. The reason this isn't entirely accurate is because, like I said, you're not, or I haven't said this yet, but you're landing on your heels. You're not jumping or running in from you're not launching into your next strike from your heels. I'm aware of that. But when you land, right, you land on your heel, your foot rolls, the rest of your foot contacts, and then you launch from that point. But what that establishes is the loss of energy, and I'll get into that. Potentially now. Yeah, I guess potentially now. So those are the 2 different running strikes, right? So when you run naturally, you have a 4-foot running strike, and then when you run with shoes on, if you're a shod runner, here are little vocab so you can sound trendy, and I'll get into this. I'm dating myself and stamping myself with all this. Read Born to Run, it's a script for what I'm saying. But shod runners are runners that have shoes. Shod means shoed runner. Unshod is barefoot. Who knows? That's what they say in the research. But anyways, so when you run barefoot, 4-foot strike, the position that puts your body in is a bent knee, bent ankle, bent knee, movable or dynamic hips. The other one, when you run with shoes or shod runner, you're landing on your heels, and that's putting your body in a specific position, right? So you have 2 different profile sets depending on which way you run, and this creates and manipulates forces very differently. So now we're going to get into why you hit this concussive force, and if you look at a barefoot runner, you don't see that. They're just steady, right? They're just, you know what I mean? The top half of them doesn't move too much even. A lot of people say if you wear a necklace, this is a good way to get good. If you wear a necklace and you can run without the necklace bobbing, moving, you're doing it right. It's far cry from this. Right? So why does that happen? So I'm going to show some diagrams. I don't know if you can really see it. Actually, we'll get into that because that's more of the forces. Why does those concussive forces, why are those generated? When you land on your heel, right, and there's no place for that energy to go, that reverberates and dissipates throughout the whole body, right? That's why when you land, right, all that force from the landing is being shoved into the ground and then being bounced through your body, out through the body, out through the ground, out into sound, energy, heat, all the physics type stuff, right? You're losing a lot of energy, and it looks like that. Bam! every time you land, so if you watch me on my heels, right, bam, I have no energy. I have to then generate all my energy for my next jump. Bam, all gone, regenerate, gone, regenerate, gone. Why does it do that? Because you're landing on a straight leg. If you're landing on a straight leg, you have no fulcrums and no place to muscularly store the energy. When I land on a 4-foot strike, right, my knees will bend and my ankles will bend. As that bend happens, what I'm doing is, as you saw when I was jumping up and down on my toes, the reason that's more efficient and looks better is, one, the whole leg is, picture it like, you know, a 1.5 foot thing of foam, right? Instead of having like an inch thing of foam to cushion, to like, you know, absorb, your body does that. So your body absorbs, but as it's absorbing, those forces and those energies are loaded into your springy muscles in the back of your legs. So when I land, right, bam, right, as this happens, the muscular, or the energy is being stored in my Achilles tendon, throughout my calf muscles, and when that energy is stored, when I go into my next foot strike, bam, I have that energy. That energy was recycled. So the force of my landing helps propels me into my next foot strike. You have to do less work. So when you land on your heels, biomechanically, and I'll get into more of how the energy and forces are manipulated through this, but when you land on your heels, all that energy's gone, it goes into the ground, and then you have to redo it. When you land on your 4 feet, you don't, it's recycled spring. Now what does this look like? We'll get into the diagrams now. Okay. Normal shoe runner, normal heel strike runner. Like I said, bam, you land on the heels. That energy goes into the knees, into the hips, bam, right? Now, and this is easier to show here because you can see the whole thing, not half my body. So if you look, when you to land on an extended locked leg, I just remembered I forgot to say a few different good things. It's okay, we'll get there. So when I land on this heel, right, to get this landing position, the foot has to be in front of me, right? See how the core of the body's here? And this is decently accurate for the way you'd see it. It might be a little exaggerated, but it's pretty on point for what you see for runners. The foot lands in front of the body. So not only is it like you're jumping up and down straight on your heels, and then that energy is gone, the energy is being gone this way, but then not only that, you're in a braking motion when you do that, right? This position is more of akin to, like, you know, if you see like an ice skater or something like that, and they're like ripping along, and they'll just like you know, like do like that quick turn slide, and then they'll have to like angle their body into that like braking motion to counteract the forces, so that if they did it straight, they'd tip over, right? Like say if you went to go do like a hockey stop like that, you know, you'd tip over. That's why you got to be down, like more at an angle. Can't see that, like more at an angle instead of that. This, when you land here, all that forces and all that energy is going backwards. When you're here, you're landing underneath yourself, right? Almost like a segue. So you're almost literally falling forward. You're falling forward and then using this energy to spring yourself from not falling down, basically, right? So it's more like a segue. You're falling into it, and then your foot strikes keep you upright. Whereas this, you land, and then you have to get up and over each one of your foot strikes. So you're in a braking motion, whereas actually you're in a forward moving motion. Backward moving motion, forward moving motion. Which one do you think is better for running? Yeah, that one. Okay. What this does is when you do this creates an upside down pendulum. It's much more efficient. So bam, you land, you lose all your energy, you have to regenerate it, but moreover, you have to get yourself up and over that foot strike each time too. So not only do you lose your energy, you then have to regenerate the energy, regenerate the energy in such a way to then get your body up and over your foot strike each time. This, you land, the force of the land is recouped into your springy muscles. You're falling forward, so you don't even have to expend the energy to get yourself forward already, and then you just spring into the next one. The forces are recycled, used much more efficiently. You can just see that. This is an upside down pendulum. The legs swing underneath you. This, the top body keeps it a particular angle the entire time. Legs swing underneath you. So yeah, when you do that, you're the main difference too here is the muscle groups you're using. So when you're doing a 4-foot landing strike, you're using, like I said, your calves and the springy muscles in the lower part of the leg. When you're landing with an outstretched leg, right, what you got to do is to get yourself up and over that foot strike and to do a lot of the body movements, right, that you're using more of your thighs, your quadriceps, right? You're using more of those power muscles, you know, right? Like you're doing a bunch of squats. That's not a rapid explosion muscle. So then the muscle, yeah, your thighs are stronger than your calves, but they're not built for that. They're built to do, 8 sets of squats. They're not built to do a few thousand foot strikes. So you lose a lot of energy there, and stuff like that. Now we'll get into the evolutionary, we'll get into Daniel Lieberman and the evolutionary stuff, but a lot of this research is based around Daniel Lieberman's research. He's a Harvard anthropologist, and he's a professor too. I think he teaches, but he studies like indigenous people and stuff like this. He took a bunch of native people. Yeah, we'll get into him. This stuff is based off of slow motion pressure plate testing and things like this. They took natural people, they filmed them, how they ran. This is how we run, with a 4-foot strike. It's not like we're making this up. One other biomechanic argument is the arch. Because a lot of people say, oh, you need the Dr. Scholl's inserts, or your running shoe needs to have an arch to support your arch in the shape of your foot. That's also lunacy. Write that one down really quick. So architecturally, right? If you look at an arch, the way to make an arch stronger, the way the arch is designed and meant to operate, is the stacking of these blocks get to the keystone, right? The middle arch block, right? And as you press it down onto the top of this arch, right? So you're pressing down onto the arch. Those forces push into the next bit of the arch, right? And that the weight from up top actually makes the arch stronger. The way you weaken an arch is if you press up underneath it, right? Because then you're taking the forces away that press these blocks into one another, and then the arch falls apart. So, when you are, now, I understand like the foot isn't necessarily identical or an architectural arch, but it is. The only difference is there's movement, to it. It's got muscles, and it's a flexible arch, but still the principles stand. When you have an arch in your shoe, that's pressing up against the arch, and it's not allowing it to do its job, or at least you're pressing up under it, which takes away from that top strength, right? That pressure strength. There's an argument too. Say when you get a cast, right? Your arm's in a cast, your muscles are going to atrophy after you get the cast off or whatever, your muscles have atrophied. They're smaller than your other arm because you haven't used them, right? So when you finally get that cast off, you got to do a lot of curls to get this equal to this arm. You haven't used the muscles. You have to regrow the muscles that have been used. Similarly, when you put that arch underneath you, you're not using those muscles. Those muscles atrophy, and then you thus need the support. And that's how they get you. Boom, quads, pendulum, different muscle groups used. I think we got this one decent. Maybe not. 3, evolutionary argument. Sorry, I just, anyways, before we get into the evolutionary argument, we'll do this, because I wanted to give you guys a taste of this, and we'll do it now in the middle, I guess. I wanted to give you guys a taste of, before we got into the vegetables, I wanted to give you a taste of where we're going. So we'll do this now before we do the evolutionary argument. And again, I'm going to get into this in the end, but to me, understanding and knowing as much of this that I know, it's damn near depressing sometimes going into an athletic store. Countless times. I have walked in and seen a 5 by 10 or 20 poster, 10 by 5, 10 by 20 foot poster, and seen this athlete, the picture of the athlete, whatever. And this guy's running with completely wrong form. The heel strike. We've established this at this point. This guy is heel striking. How the hell can I go into an athletic store and go look at a huge poster, advertisement poster, right? And this athlete is running on his heels and running improperly. How could I look at marathon runners that are running improperly? In the picture, the guy didn't know, the photographer didn't know, the producer just let that one slip by, his trainer didn't think to know. It's damn near unbelievable if it wasn't true. I don't know how we got that far removed and how we've got that far diluted to just... Anyways, we'll get into that. But just to be able to... Such a authoritative source, or not even authoritative, but you're going to an athletic store and that's the advertisements on the wall. How are they improper? How is that inaccurate? And this is the point of this discussion. To demonstrate a mass delusion, and delusion's a little rough, a perpetuated lie. To demonstrate a mass perpetuated lie, we have been deluded from our natural ways and we've lost a lot of things. We've been deluded. We've been lied to. So anyways, to further deconstruct this. So before we even get into this evolutionary argument, I just want to, let me just throw this out there too. Let's say that we're going to have this differently. Alright, we're just going to move into the evolutionary argument, and then I'll get into that. So, evolutionary argument, right? Not only is running with a barefoot or a 4-foot running pattern, right? A 4-foot running form. Not only is that biomechanically more efficient, as we've established, and better for you, running, and specifically running that way, and like I said, this is based off Daniel Lieberman's research, running that way is fundamental to our human heritage. It's how we survived. I'll get into that. We'll get to that. But what I was going to say was, if that's true, if running is completely fundamental to our heritage, how? If running is completely fundamental to our heritage, it would still be true. Or, okay, if it wasn't fundamental to our heritage, right, that we have not had a history of running, And the narrative, the modern day narrative is true, that we bumbled around the woods, running on our heels and trying to escape predators, and we used our brains to outwit people, and that's how we survived, and blah blah blah. One, that's not how we survived, right? We survived by running. Our brains are touted as what's set us apart from all animals, but it's not. It's our ability to run. But let's say that's not true. Let's say the normal narrative or the push narrative is accurate, and we're bumbling idiots that use their minds to out-trick animals, and we suck at all physical things. Our bodies, what are we gonna do? So say that's true, that we suck at running evolutionarily as a species compared to other species. And say you were born with shoes. You were born with Nike shoes. You came out of the womb, boom, Nike shoes, right? And we did this research and found out that, when you cut these things off the bottom of your feet, when you cut these weird foam cushions, I don't even know what they would be if they were born with it, but say they're exactly Nike, right? You're born with these foam things on the bottom of your feet. If we cut those off, it's still true that running with the type of body we have, with a 4-foot barefoot running style, is more biomechanically accurate. But what I'm trying to say is, say this is a completely new concept, that for thousands of years we ran with shoes, with the heel strike pattern, and that running is destructive to the body, yada yada yada. And when you cut these things off and change your running gait and running form, that it's much more biomechanically efficient and much better for your body, and it's not as destructive. Those things would be true. On top of that, what I'm getting to is it's fundamental to our heritage, and it's how we survive. So this narrative, it goes deeper. The narrative, or at least this tie that our ability to run, or the way it just goes deeper. So let's get into it. Where this comes out of, or where this thought train starts, is evolutionarily the explosion of our brain size. Right? And I don't even know if our brains necessarily got bigger. I think they definitely did, but it was even just more so the caloric intake they needed, and the level of abstractions and just the power that the brain utilized exponentially increased. In evolutionary terms, it was a blink of an eye. One day we were just, hunter-forager, omnivoric creatures, would stumble around, pick up some food, whatever, blah, blah. And then boom, right? We, overnight, 10,000, 100,000 years, our brain size, exploded. Brain function exploded. And that's the thing that anthropologists have been looking at pretty extensively for some time now. We're gonna check out the morning. So they've been looking at this for some time now, and it's something that's fascinated them. And the narrative was that probably our ability to cook meat is what did that. So we were these omnivoric creatures, blah blah blah, and we used our brains to carry spears around, and then would maybe would get one deer, or maybe we found some meat, blah blah, and then we started cooking it, and then cooking it allowed an entirely different or just allowed us to absorb in the nutrition in the meat to be more bioassimilable to us. And then bioassimilable meaning biologically you can assimilate, add or accept the nutrition more efficiently, bioassimilable. So by cooking it, the nutrients in the meat were more bioassimilable. The only tricky part though about that is you need meat to be able to cook meat. So then, so then what do we do? We were smart creatures back in the day, pretty witty, and then we had these sharpened sticks, and then maybe we hunted that way to get the meat to then experiment and come up with cooking. The only issue, though, is that before the brain explosion, our brain sizes were such that we didn't have the ability for abstraction. We didn't have enough of ability for abstraction to come up with weaponry or tools. we probably had tools, maybe not weaponry, into like, especially to the degree we need, like not definitely. There's a small minority of animals that use tools. There's a vast majority that don't. So it's not especially rare, or it's not unheard of in the animal kingdom. But to do it, you need a fair degree of mental capability and ability for abstraction. That takes a lot of calories and a certain amount of brain size. We didn't have either. We neither had the brain size to come up with weapons, and we probably didn't have the caloric intake to sustain the thought of abstraction to come up with weapons, because that's a tough concept. If you think about it, take one of these sticks again. Think about it. To come up with the concept of bludgeon an animal, right? That to use this as a tool, and then to come up with the concept to attack with it. That takes some abstraction. It doesn't seem like it, because it's pretty easy to us. We have books. We're far past coming up with weapons, but it does take a lot of abstraction, a lot of brain power, and we didn't have that. So the issue of this comes out of, if we didn't have the brains to come up with weapons, we thus didn't have weapons, how are we hunting? Because, there are some truths in the narrative. We're not particularly strong. We don't got sharp claws or teeth. Like, what are we gonna do? Just like do this to an animal to death? Like, we're not too fierce. You know what I mean? But what we are is hyper efficient, and this is what this gets into. So if we didn't have weapons to hunt, how did we get animals? We ran them down until they died of heat exhaustion. That is what happens. How does that happen? So this is called persistence hunting, if any of you want to look into it. There's some rare accounts of, I think, some tribes in Africa, and perhaps I think there's some legends of the Tarahumara, whatever. Again, I'm stamping myself. There's a few collections of tribes that may still do it. It's very rare, but it's called persistence hunting. And what you do is you chase after an animal until it dies of heat exhaustion. How does that happen? There's a few ways. Like I said, we are hyper efficient creatures, right? One of the main ways is we can sweat. So if you look at the evolutionary track, we evolved in Africa, and especially around that time, we'll get into that too, but it was very hot. So heat regulation was very important, and we used that to our advantage. So we don't have a lot of hair. We lost, maybe not me, but I need a haircut. But some, we don't have hair everywhere, The reason for that is because if you expose your skin, right, and then you put sweat glands in it, most animals don't have sweat glands, right? But if you have sweat glands, you can, the moisture on your body, when that evaporates, it takes with it heat. So your body is continuously cooling itself off with sweat. Whereas an animal, when it's hot, or, to regulate its heat, has to pant and allow the vapor to, evaporate off its tongue, and then cool its body through the breathing. We don't necessarily have to do that because we can sweat. So then we have a much higher threshold to physical activity in extreme temperatures. Okay. Then also our running gait. Our running gait is more efficient than most animals for the reasons I said, but more specifically, we are the fastest trot animal. We as a species can trot faster than any animal on the planet. We trot faster than horses, we trot faster than cheetahs, dogs, antelope, blah, blah, blah. We don't have a gallop though, and that's why our trot speeds are so fast. But again, we use that. Now, what's a trot? What's a gallop? I'll just run this down quick. So a trot is, say an animal has 4 legs, right? A trot is when the front and back leg are operating the same, and the front and back leg are operating the same, right? Trot, chit, trot, chit, trot, chit, trot. You see dogs do this, blah, blah. Say if you run next to a dog, right? and you run next to him fast enough, and again, that's the thing, you're running next to a, well, we'll get into that. So trot, right? What you're going to see is the animal, if they start going fast enough, they're going to change from these appendages operating dependently, and then like these ones operate interdependently, these ones together, right? What happens is these ones are together, and then these ones are interdependent, right? So instead of switching, its front and back legs start working together, right? So it's almost like jumping from each foot strike to each foot strike, right? And what happens is, when you do this, and this doesn't happen to us because all we do is trot, right? When that animal extends into that landing onto the front legs, and then when that back leg comes to meet it, that crushes the cavity. That crushes your abdominal cavity. So when that animal comes in to land on those back legs to then spring into the forefoot strikes, or the front feet, when the front legs go into their strike, right? When you're right here, that cavity is compressed, right? And it compresses the internal organs, not to a damaging degree, but, well, if you think about it, what's the only organ that really changed its shape? The lungs, right? You're not going to compress your liver, but you're going to compress your lungs, because those inflate and deflate, right? So as that animal crunches down to make that next strike, it compresses its lungs, so it can't get a full breath. So that's why most animals can only gallop for a certain amount of time, right? Like cheetahs have a top speed of 60, but only can do it for 5 seconds or something like that, because they can't breathe. We just trot, and we can always breathe. We might not be the fastest, but we're the fastest trotters and the most efficient ones. So, the way this works. So the way this works is, say there's like an antelope, or there's an antelope grazing on some grass and whatnot. Then all of a sudden, it looks over and then sees 6 or 8 of these hairless freaking bipedal creatures hopping around after it. And then it'll just take off and start running, right? Galloping away. Get me the hell away from those weird looking things, right? Man, run the hell away. So it does that, it'll run away, probably go find a tree to cool off. Sit down, cool off. We ran away, we escaped those guys. Cooling off. We go, I think it went over there. Right? It went over that one, the crest right there. So then we go, okay. And then we all hop up after it, and then we go over the hill, and then we see the thing and go, and then the antelope sees us, gets scared shitless again, and takes off. We probably didn't have enough time to recover from the last time, so then it starts running again, and then it goes far away. And we'll get into this too. This cat and mouse thing is where the scientific method originated from, and that's a whole another podcast, and there's some good stuff in that one with the school system and stuff. So that antelope runs away. We then again go chase it. That antelope sees us, we go, and then the antelope sees us, oh crap, and runs. And this cat and mouse happens continuously, right? We keep tracking this animal down and making it run to the point it cannot run any longer, and then it either just gives up, we show up and hop on its head until it, we have a meal, or or I'll take turns until we have a meal, or then it might die actually of heat exhaustion and overheating. But anyways, that's how we got meat, right? So then we start eating meat because and it's really not even just the cooking, so the brain size came from cooking, right? The reason this doesn't make sense, because one, we didn't have meat laying around, but even if we did, say if we were eating meat previously and then started cooking the meat, that isn't enough change in caloric intake or nutritional sourcing to have your brain explode that rapidly. We needed to go from one particular diet to an entirely different diet. So we weren't eating meat or if we ate meat, it was scavenged, like in very small amounts. And then we started eating meat at a mass quantity. And then we started cooking it, right? So it wasn't even like I said, there was never ever was there meat laying around and we started cooking that stuff. It just doesn't make sense. There was no we didn't have weaponry. We couldn't have killed the animals. How are we killing the animals to get the meat to cook in the first place? And to cook at quantities, again, that seem present, to have that cavity, that brain, the explosion in brain size. We didn't use weapons. We didn't use anything. We didn't even really use our intelligence that much. We just ran after animals until they died of heat exhaustion. That's crazy. That is a far cry. That's a far cry different from stumbling around, evading predators here and there. We are in the category of stallions as creatures. We're in the category of like cheetahs and panthers and like that thing. We're predatory animals, and we use our efficiency. We run. There's a race. It's a 100-mile race. It's 100 horses versus 100 humans. And guess who's usually in the top 5? Humans. Over 100 miles, we're more efficient than horses. So like I said, this is a far cry difference than stumbling around. Running is fundamental to our heritage as humans. It makes us us, and it's how we survived. Do you think, if that's the case, you'd have... If that's the case, do you think you'd only have a 20 or a 30-year running career? Again, I'll stay at myself. So there's the Copper Canyon, Mexico, or whatnot. There's these natives, or this tribe, the Tarahumara, I believe. And no one knows how to say it. And they'll regularly go for crazy ass long runs, right? And one day, one of these guys decided to go for a run and whatnot. And he was just running, doing his thing. I'm pretty sure So I hate noise. I'm sorry, guys. Run! Anyways. So this guy was running along, whatever, blah, blah. And he seemed out of place, right? Because he had all these bright colors on, he had his traditional garb on, and then all of a sudden this guy, wherever he was running, kind of stopped him and was like, dude, where are you from? I was like, Mexico. I'm from Mexico. I run. I like the earth. Whatever he said. And then the guy in the city, or wherever, the native at this point, where this guy was running at, he's like, that's cool. This is Canada. This is Canada, dude. You ran from Mexico, bro? It's not even the border. It's it's kind of southern Mexico, I believe. This MF ran all the way through all of Mexico, through the United States, all the way into Canada, and was found in Canada. I'm just running. The guy was 60 to 80 years old. There's reports of 94, 95-year-olds. It was two, 90-year-olds that ran in, one of the Tough Mudder or something like that. It was one of the 100-mile marathons. What? But hey, you only have a 20, 25-year running career. If you run on your heels. Yeah, so that's all stupid. Here's another stupid argument, the hygienic argument. Okay, so this is a short one. I'll make this quick. A lot of people say that running with bare feet is dirty. Gross. You're gonna get a lot of germs. And that shoes are where you want to be. That's clean. It's the opposite. It's literally this whole thing is the opposite of everything. You know what I mean? It's weird. We're in upside down land. So putting shoes on is hygienic, but having your feet out is not, right? And so, you call this, dirty if you want, it is dirt. That wasn't really dirt, but you know what I mean. We only evolved in it, so, if you want to have an apprehension against it, that's you. But inside of a shoe is a petri dish or a party house for germs, right? Germs love dark, damp, warm places. Your shoe is dark, wet, and warm, right? Your foot or outside, right? There's air, there's light. There's no moisture because it can evaporate usually, or if there is, it does evaporate. That's a much better, more conducive place for cleanliness. So that's a stupid argument. Another stupid argument. What happens when you step on something? First, we have eyes. I've countless times I've been for a run and seen something I don't want to step on, and clearly I just not stepped on it. Okay, what happens when you do? Because that does happen seldomly. Then this is actually kind of a cool point here too. So this will drag this one out a little bit. Okay, so what happens when you step on something? Well, first we'll do this. Okay, so the neuromuscular system, right? The way it's set up, right? If you look, you have all your neurons that run down into your leg and then, go to your feet and then throughout your body and whatnot, right? Now, reproduction is the pinnacle of our existence. It is what everything in our being is set to do, right? Our running ability, our minds, anything you want to say, our fight for survival, these things are all surrounding reproducing, or at least the incentives are there to reproduce because we want to create life and pass it down. This is the pinnacle of our existence. So you'd think it'd be specifically incentivized, and it is. But if you look at the neuromuscular system, right, there's more neurological circuitry going down into the bottom of your feet, right? There's more nerve endings on the bottom of your feet than your genitalia. Whoa. Now that doesn't mean it's necessarily more sensitive. What that means is your feet are dealing with more information pertinent to whatever than reproduction. Now granted, the reasoning for that is so you can get to the reproduction, you know what I mean? And once you're there, it's all set up fine and dandy, but so I'm not saying that running is even more important than reproducing, have a wife, don't run all day. But what I am saying is that that's how much it's incentivized. There's more nerve endings on the bottom of your feet than your genitalia. That is the way your body is laid out. It is functionally incentivized, or at least your body is set up to be doing these things, right? Again, far cry different from needing Dr. Scholl's and having a 25 running year career. So that's another good one. We can keep going. We'll stop there. All right, we'll stop there. I think you guys get the point. Hopefully, I wish I did a better job deconstructing this. I always do. I always think I'm going to knock it out of the park, and I stumble over my words for half the time. But hopefully now we can at least begin to understand this paradigm, and at least how stupid it is. I'm going to have to turn my light on pretty soon. But so again, running is harmful for you. Well, maybe, dude, if you didn't run on your heels, we're not particularly efficient animals, or we don't run that evolutionarily, that's how we survived. And again, if you needed shoes, you would have been born with them. How did we get here? And this is what I want to know. How the hell, what happened, how did we get here? And this is, so, here, hold on. Okay. Alright, so, how did we get here? Let me check one more thing. I literally strapped my phone to a tree, so it's not the strongest setup. Okay, let's check if we're recording. Screw it, why not? Alright. How do we get here? And this is kind of what happens. So our world is constructed or built upon capitalism. Capitalism is a market system that incentivizes finding issues for the population or for the society. It incentivizes you to make a product to solve a problem, to then distribute the product, to then get monetary reward or compensation basically for that. And this is I don't know. This is why I don't necessarily know. And this is why I wanted to do this one too. This isn't high stakes. I'm not calling out any multinational corporations, maybe Nike, but other than that, it's not like, this isn't a truther episode or any sort of deep dive on truth. This is just a demonstration of how these things can form. This is why I wanted to have it. I don't know if this is purposeful or not. I don't know if this was just a misunderstanding or if it was a purposeful lie. And there's a lot of purposeful lies. And that's another reason why I'm having this. I don't know which one it is. But at least somewhere along the line, if we have this capitalism system of creating products to solve problems, to get rewards for it, monetary compensation, people get sneaky. And a lot of times when you reward something, people find the easiest road to the reward, Not necessarily the best for the system, but just how to get the reward the quickest. So a lot of times people, what they'll do is they'll create problems that don't exist to then sell a product for it. And this is kind of what happened with this. And like I said, I don't know if one came out of the other, which one came first, the chicken or the duck or egg or whatever. What came first, the chicken or the duck? Yeah, what did come first, the chicken or the duck? So, because Nike back in the day, they came out with the first jogger, right? Because traditionally, if you look, we didn't used to run always like this, right? But around the 50s or 60s or something like that, Nike came out with this running shoe. They called it the jogger. Modern day running science allows you to land, run differently in a more relaxed position, and blah, blah, blah. They don't want you to remember that, though. But it was pitched in marketing on this shoe allows you to run differently, or at least more comfortably. Easier. It's easier to run that way than just to go out for a jog. The thing is then, though, so then now you're running improperly and you're causing damage to your body. Then these people pay for research done, or they're looking into the issue, gee, why is running hurtful, or whatever. And then they look and look at all these forces flying through the body. And the thing is, though, they're testing the people with shoes. And this is where the problem comes in. It's one and the same. So, the narrative that running with shoes is bad for you and that you need shoes to combat these concussive forces or you're going to deteriorate your body completely, and even then when running with shoes you're still going to deteriorate your body, was created, that narrative was constructed upon people running improperly with the shoes that they're trying to give you. See how it's one and the same? It's kind of ass backwards. So the lie created the lie, or something like that, and then we all fall into place and do that. It's nearly incredible, and again, if you look, it leaves me baffled, feeling crazy sometimes. And I know a lot about it, and this, like I said, this research was done by a Harvard anthropologist. He was thinking about this stuff. He's like, this doesn't make sense. How does if running is so bad for us and we suck at it so much, that doesn't make sense or be conducive for a natural creature. He was looking into it, did a lot of forced pressure plate testing, slow motion running, like, this, that, did a lot of analysis, found out that naturally we run with a 4-foot running strike. So we don't run the way we do. Like, factually, we aren't supposed to run the way we do with Nike shoes or Adidas, whatever, Under Armour, whatever running shoe you want. And again, so just like you seeing all these people, right? Like, if I'm just blah. I see a foot race, or like, I see someone running down the street, and then they go slam, 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 slam heel, slam heel, slam heel. How? Like I said, it leaves me feeling crazy. There's many, many, many more reasons I feel crazy for the beliefs I had, and that's the thing. A lot of the stuff, or at least when you're trying to find truth, in this type of world, you're going to be in a very small minority. And that's why I wanted to have this discussion. I wanted us to be able to address a paradigm everyone's living within, a pretty innocuous one, or like not super deep and not super X-Files-y, So just like, the reason, like I said, is so when we finally get to some of these harsher stuff, and when you do, for a myriad of reasons, you're like, how am I the only one? How am I the only one? Or, how am I alone, or in such a small minority of belief? It leaves you feeling like one of the main characters from Fahrenheit 451. And this is why I wanted to have this discussion with barefoot running. We're not talking about, if we went to the moon or not, or if, our government lies to us, or, the shape of the earth, or any of that crap that's floating around right now, which we will find the truth of. It's barefoot running, so when we finally get out there and, like, things do get crazy, because they do when you find truth in a world of lies, we're able to come back here and touch it, We're able to touch it. And this is a home base, and we can understand that we are creatures who forgot how to run. That's our inception dreidel. We are creatures that forgot how to run. It's insane. It's insane. Like, imagine if you went to the zoo and you saw a tiger. Hey, tiger. And you watched it. How about this? Let's say there's a legacy, or a family tree of tigers, a succession of tigers, 4, 5, 6 generations, whatever you want. And you're watching these tigers. And the thing is you've seen natural tigers and how the normal tigers run, but you're looking at this tiger in captivity running completely wrong. Say, like, it's like running on its elbows, or it's like it leaves its toes up, or something like, or instead of landing on its toes, it lands on like its heel, or something stupid like that. Well, I'll tell you, that hurt me. To put a creature in captivity so long, to have it be removed so far from what it naturally and truly is, it forgot its primary function with reality, like how to move, how to run. It was estranged from its ability to run. That would devastate me. That would really be sad to see that. That is a direct analogy to us. Just remove the tiger. Humans have been in captivity, and we're free-range chickens, so I just say domesticated. Humans have, been in domestic captivity, for so long, and in such a forceful way, we forgot how to run. It's a direct comparison. What does that say for our world and society? Not much. It tells us it's inauthentic. or at least ignorant. Another visualization. Say there's these eagles, right? Natural eagles. They have a society of eagles or birds or whatever. And slowly through time, they started wearing braces on their wings to fly. And it's not even like they're like, it's not even like the narrative's like, yeah, man, like, okay, you put these braces on and then you can fly better. No, the narrative would be for them that you cannot fly without braces. Like, you need a brace to attach from your shoulder ligament to then go into on the leading edge of your wing joint to then stabilize your forces through flying. And so it's not even better to wear the braces. You absolutely need the braces to run, and flying's bad for you. So flying's, as a bird, flying's bad for you, and you need these braces to fly, because flying's bad for you, it's destructive. Don't dare fly without your braces. I'm gonna mention going outside, seeing a bunch of birds fly with braces on their wings. What the? It would be absolutely stupid. Then if you could talk bird to understand like that their society believes they need those things. Again, direct comparison to us. A direct comparison. We believe we need foam springs on the bottom of our feet to absorb shock that naturally is absorbed through the bending of our knees and joints and, the loading of our muscles. But we need those foam cushiony things, don't we? And this is what they're doing. They're putting a price tag on our existence, on our nature. So what they want is every time, say it's wintertime, right? Instead of just being able to open your door and go for a run at any time, all my running buddies, they're like, hey, you ready for your run? Or you got your running shoes? Like, always. So instead of having that mentality of just being able to open the door and go for a run, they want there to be a $250 price tag on that activity. So you have to go and spend some money for shoes. And they don't want the marketing around it or the propaganda around it to give any flickering or hint of you not needing those shoes. Trying to put a price tag on everything, an entry or a barrier to entry. Let's keep the system going. You need braces to fly. It's so painfully, it's crazy. So before, I was supposed to do this too before I wrapped up. I'll just talk a little bit quickly about my personal relationship with this too. This was supposed to be the deconstruction. We'll get to the commentary later. I did high school sports and all this stuff, blah, 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 And I ran with shoes always, for high school, because I had ducked feet and flat arches, right? And so I remember for football, I had to put Dr. Scholl's in shirts, or some sort of maybe knockoff brand of, for arch support, and that helped a bit and whatnot. But I remember I was trying to train for sports, and I wanted to start running. And I remember I tried to run with shoes on, through the bogs out through here in the woods. And I just remember feeling like, this blows. This absolutely sucks. This is not fun. This is not good. Which I think a lot of you can sympathize with, and probably why it's so easy to believe we suck at running. So I didn't run for a while. And I don't know, because I've always been kind of a more naturalistic kid. I live near water. I'm always swimming, so I'm usually barefoot and moving around barefoot. I go for walks barefoot. I always have. So maybe I tried this on my own first, or I'll just give Christopher McDougall the credit though, because could have happened either way. But I think what happened was I one day watched Christopher McDougall's TEDx talk, and I was like, holy crap, I'm gonna go try that. And I did, and I never went back. Once you go barefoot, you know. I think you know what I'm talking about, but it is one of the biggest differences in something I've seen in my life. Night and day. Night and day. So as running, you know what I mean? Like, so I ran for a while and blah, blah, blah. And like, you know, what happened was my ducked flat arches, you know, my feet, I had to change my body and how I manipulated forces, because it's all about how your body manipulates these forces and nothing doing it for you. So slowly my ducked feet and flat arches went from straight feet to, you know, arches. You know, I went down a few sizes, like I went down a size in shoes because of my arches, you know, constricted and stuff like this. I changed the shape of my foot. I don't have issues now. You know, but hey, you need those shoe inserts. I remember one time after finding this stuff and started running a lot, at that time I did track. And I remember I'd be trying to run barefoot and they're like, Nathaniel, you need to put your shoes on. I'm like, why? Like this, like, why do you weren't born with shoes, blah, blah, blah. There's this, Daniel Lieberman, there's this Harvard anthropologist, you know, blah. The rules say, blah, 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 you need to do this, and blah. Or rather, it was like, you need to put shoes on. And I was like, why? Like, you weren't born with shoes. The rules say that you need closed-toe shoes to blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, why are the rules the rules? Like, what? Like, you know, like, look at this, you know, why are you subjecting all these kids to landing on their heels and hurt, like, you know, the pain and the destruction of their bodies, and you're just allowing them to do that? You know, when there's this Harvard researcher, this Harvard anthropology professor, looking into this, doing all this research, look at all of the research behind it, there's no way around it. They kind of cocked their heads back and they're like, Harvard has a shitty track team. I didn't last long in track. So how can I go into an Olympia, Dick's Sporting Good, whatever, and again, I look at that poster, and there's that guy landing with wrong form, and no one knows. Like, no one knows. No one knows. No one wanted to correct him. He's an athlete being paid to be an athlete, and look at him go. A lot of this research was done in, like, you know, 02, 07 maybe. You know, it's been like at least a decade that a lot of this research has happened. And again, still, you go to an Olympia, you go to a Dick's Sporting Goods store, 80 to 90% of the shoes on sale are still this monstrosity of heeledness. When fundamentally, like, if you buy those shoes, the $250 shoes, you might as well run backwards in them. Biomechanically, look at, here, ready? I'll do this. This is not the right page. Where are you? Oh, here's some more diagrams. Okay. Again, if you're landing like this, you know, if you're landing like this guy's a little exaggerated. If you're landing like this, you might as well be running backwards. You're landing, that is a better running form, more conducive to running backwards than, say, this. With those 250, you might as well flush it down the toilet, you know, or just go around running backwards everywhere, because that's really, really all it's good for. And this is truth. You know, and I know money, you know, companies have an vested interest in doing all this stuff, and you know, I don't know. It leaves me baffled, really, and that's, I don't even know if there's much commentary beyond that. There's the only thing you can do is, like, run properly yourself, and what I want to say is this is not a lesson on how to run barefoot. This is a mental exercise. I'm encasing an argument within barefoot running, right? So I can do a video on how to run barefoot later. There's plenty of other ones. If you want to do it, start slow, build up slow, right? Don't just go out there and do it. Do your research, yada yada yada, right? So like, yeah, this isn't a lesson, but what this is just a deconstruction of an idea that's widely regarded as true. Because there's a lot of ideas and there's a lot of ways we live that we think are true, that when you look at it, or at least when you step outside of the paradigm, you see a bunch of birds with braces. You see a bunch of tigers that don't know how to run. And I just don't understand how we got there, how we got here. But like I said, you know, there's not too much here to say or fix, or, you know, the insight, or at least, like I said, the insight of this is the discussion itself. You know, hopefully now you've at least just removed yourself from that small paradigm. And if you've done so, allow this to be your inception dreidel. You know, when we get to the ruling elite and how, you know, they potentially own us, and like literally, or narrative is very strong and very wrong in this world. And the bystander effect, you know, psychologically, I know I can break that down later, but basically what that is just if everyone's doing something, you're more likely to do that, psychologically. The bystander effect. And I think that's what this counts on, or the system counts on, is that, you know, we're just all mindlessly moseying along, eating the narrative, taking it in, just doing what they want and how they want us to live. You know, are they? Imagine all the runners who've had their knees and hips replaced, thousands of dollars. Which, by the way, that's great because that's thousands of dollars going into the system. Imagine how many runners they have led to destroy their bodies. I don't know. I'm definitely rambling here, but I hope I'll just start cutting off here. But like I said, hopefully now you can at least feel, you know, if you haven't broken many paradigms, which I feel like, you know, well, I'm trying to speak to everyone too, and I'll talk about that later. I'm not trying to talk to an audience. So I'm talking to everybody. So those of you who have not broke many paradigms, I hope this breaks one for you, or at least, you know, so we can, or at least when we get out into the thick of it, you know, hopefully this is a easy enough and digestible enough and intimate enough topic that is a perpetuated lie, that you can understand that there are perpetuated lies. And that's really all this is. You know, let's look at a paradigm, deconstruct it factually, understand why it's untrue, and what society looks like that's following a lie, a mass perpetuated delusion. I've showed up to foot races before, barefoot, you know, and all the people with running shoes all look at me. By the way, they think they're right. This is the funniest thing. There's like, you know, 500 people at this, you know, foot race or more, and they all have shoes on, various brands. They're all just like standing around like they're runners. They are, you know what I mean? I know they run. But they look at me. I'm running the best, most natural way, but they look at me, right? Because it's different. Oh, what are you doing? Right? They look at me and they're like, you forget something? You know, I look back at them like, you got something extra? You don't need what you have. Why are you coming at me? Like, but that's how strong it is. And the thing is the barefoot people are never the ones to like start shit. It's always the shoe people. Well, didn't you forget something, bucko? I've heard that. I can't. Like, people yell that across the street to me. Like, no, dude. No, it's all right. Another important thing, I'll make this point quick, and then we'll end it. It's cold a little bit. I'm not even specifically talking necessarily like, okay, you can run with shoes and still have a proper running form. I'm not saying only barefoot, right? What I'm saying though is that the normal running shoe with the heel makes it like very, very, like I can throw some of those shoes on and run with decent form. It's gonna be much harder, and it's gonna be uncomfortable, and it's just not gonna work right. Again, all those nerve endings on the bottom of your feet, you get so much information from the ground, right? Oh, I never even finished that. Okay, so all that nerve endings coming into the bottom of your feet, when you step on something sharp, right, that information gets sent quickly to your brain, and all you do is you just step onto the next foot strike, right? Right, literally I've run before, and I've put my foot on in class, felt that it's a sharp edge, and just popped off into the next foot strike, and fine. I've landed on glass a bunch of times and not cut my feet. I've also ran through snow, barefoot and shirtless in a blizzard at night before. I've done stupid shit. So yeah, but this isn't, like I said, I'm not necessarily saying only bare feet. You do learn proper form. Say if you're a bad runner, I recommend running barefoot, learning how to run all over again, and then maybe you can move to shoes. Because but even running with a normal modern day running shoe, even if you're an expert, is really tough. It just is. It's not conducive to proper running form. So we'll leave that. That's good. So yeah, I'm not saying only bare feet. I'm talking about the form. And the form comes from a natural existence of running barefoot. Again. And I'll just be personal here. Again, just to end it. I mentioned Fahrenheit 451. And right now in my life, with a myriad of topics and things similar to this, or at least has the implications this has, leaves me in a minority of belief. And it leaves me feeling like a main character from Fahrenheit 451. And I'll tell you what, you never want to feel like a main character of any book. Something is wrong when you're the main character of a book. Yeah, we do, all of us have the hero archetype and the manifest destiny, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, narratives are constructed from life, and books are too, and whatnot, but, you have to question yourself. I'm looking around just like the guy, everyone's got the things in their ears, they're all looking at the screens, and they're all like, I need shoes to run. Personally, I question myself. I'm like, I must be insane. I must be completely out of my mind, wingnut insane. But again, I come here, touch our home base, because I know from my years of experience, no one can debate me on this. This is one thing I have in my back pocket. There's not a lot I know what's true in this world, but if I can bet behind something, you don't need shoes to run, and it's better to run barefoot. So again, I can come back here, and I can look at the world from that one perspective, and understand this world is out of its mind. We have been in captivity for far too long, or at least been domesticated for far too long. We've lost our natural way, and it's abundantly clear, especially when you look at these things and when you remove yourself or look from outside of paradigms. And that's all this is meant to be. When shit gets crazy, we can spin it and check ourselves. Put an end to that there before I ramble for another 20 minutes. Woo! My back.